Welcome to Biz Dev Live. I am so excited to bring you the amazing, the wonderful, the comprehensive, the technological, the strategy-driven Jessica Levin. We're going to have a great discussion. Known Jessica for a while. She's had some crazy, wild moments talking about tech, working with customers. Looking forward to getting into all of that. Looking forward to all the interaction to come. Stay with me. We'll be right back after the Biz Dev theme.
Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. This is business development, not even selling it. This is intelligent. If you watch it, I promise you benefit. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T.
Jessica Leigh Levin, CMP, CAE, DES, strategist, speaker, author, connector, entrepreneur, catalyst of social change. Jessica Levin has a passion for connecting people and creating experiences. Jessica's expertise lies at the intersection of communication and technology, leveraging both digital and traditional tools to help organizations and individuals share their message and strengthen their networks. Approaching things with a strategic perspective, she's often sought out to provide guidance and consult on brand development, growth, and professional development. She speaks on marketing, networking, and connecting people, engagement, and technology. She also serves in a regional director role for Abacus Worldwide, a global accounting and law firm association. Jessica Levin is the author of Perfect Pairings, The Art of Connecting People, and Everyone Has Sugar Honey Iced Tea, Unsolicited Advice for Being Human. Thank you so much for being on the show with me today, Jessica.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk with you, and I just love your energy. Even though it's kicked off, that this is going to be a great conversation.
So tell me and our audience, what are you doing right now? I really want people to understand what's going on in your world, what kind of projects you're working on, and who you're trying to connect with. So tell us about that, and then we'll get into your history and background and your passion.
You know, I am so fortunate that this year has been very busy for me. And a lot of that has been helping new businesses start from the ground up, everything from brand design to websites and back-end technology. And I feel like I'm doing that just about every day, wearing a lot of different hats, but it's fun. Been very busy for me, and a lot of that has been helping new businesses.
That's the fun of my technology as I'm trying to share things out. All right, so I was like, what? I don't see her lips moving, and I hear her mouth speaking. The fabulous pieces of live. So talk to me about why, because I mean, I've known you in terms of knowing of you and being in Circle and Sphere. One of the big moments that stands out to me is you walking down the stairs at Texi Talk with the Google Glass on. And I remember being jealous, first of all, just like, oh my goodness, she has Google Glass. But I just have that memory of you. So you're always on the cutting edge. You have been talking on tech and strategy for such a long time. Why did you get into all this stuff? Share with me, like, why did you get into this industry? Why are you passionate about this stuff?
It's a good story. My parents sent me to computer camp in 1984, which you might be thinking, like, who went to computer camp in 1984? Did you even have computers? And I think, like, we only learned how to make this little thing go in circles, and that was it. And I was little, but I think that helped just me become comfortable with technology my whole life. And I was just an early adopter. was never somebody who wanted to do programming, but I just always felt that technology came naturally to me. And throughout my career, my jobs, while none of them were tech jobs per se, I was a user of the technology and really figured out very early from my first job out of college how technology supports everything you want to do. So rather than being the person in IT who is just running things, I really just was very drawn to how the tools make life easier, and blended that with the other things that I loved, which are marketing and event planning, which I started doing since I was 7 years old. So my career and everything that I've done has just been a culmination of things that really complement each other.
All right, so you got to tell me about the event planning at 7 years old. You can't drop that and not give a little bit more context there.
Yeah, so when I was 7, I put on a Valentine's Day party and baked cookies and decorated, and it's just a memory that really sticks out for me. And I think from there, I always loved to plan little events. My birthday is the day before Halloween, so I would plan these Halloween parties where I would make grapes out of, or eyeballs out of grapes, and it followed me into high school. I was always involved in things. In college, I was in a business fraternity and created recruiting events, or even with recruiting for jobs, and we would cut up cheese platters and try to be as professional as possible. So it's just something that I've always loved and been drawn to, and has been one of my passions. When I went to college, the event planning was not a major, or was not as common as it is today. I probably would have gone that route. But fortunately for me, I was able to weave events into the marketing roles that I've had over the years.
I love that. And I think people, talk to us, because just to kind of deep, because we're talking about the meeting planning, but you do so much stuff. You're a speaker, you're an entrepreneur, you have your own company. I'm going to throw your website up, but how did you get into the strategy and design space from all of that you just talked about?
Well, I think it's just experience. So I have a degree in entrepreneurship and I have a degree in marketing, and so you can't do marketing without strategy. And I've always had very hands-on roles. I worked for bigger organizations, but never huge organizations, and worked for small staff associations in addition to running my own business. And the only way you're going to be successful is to be strategic. And so I've just kind of had that mindset of looking at things. I was also the kid that always asked why. And I think asking why is a big part of strategy. So it's just been an evolution of learning from other people. And again, having to be so hands-on, whether it's for myself or organizations that I've worked for, it's taught me how to be strategic and tactical at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And talk to me about why sort of do your own thing? Why not work with a company? Why did you strike out and become an entrepreneur?
Listen, I went to school and I majored in marketing and entrepreneurship, and I always thought I wanted to run my own company. I thought it was going to be an event planning company. I also thought it was going to be a bakery at one point. But my company started completely by accident. Social media started to come into mainstream in 2008, 2009. I used to commute from New Jersey into New York and would read the magazines, the marketing magazines. And that's where I learned about social media. And again, I'm kind of a geek, liked technology. So I gravitated towards that. And next thing you know, somebody was asking me to do a social media marketing plan. And I started a company. And I worked for an association for 2 years while I started my company, and then jumped off the cliff into entrepreneurship. And for the most part, haven't thought about going back. There are days where I think, maybe the other side, the grass is greener. I think the jury's still out, and I think it depends on the day and depends on the person.
Yeah, no, I know. I've had a lot of conversations on this show about, the mindset of, entrepreneur versus employee. I was just talking with Cindy Novotny yesterday about the idea that, there's folks that are probably more entrepreneurs, than they know. And then there's probably a lot of business owners that, they probably are better off working with somebody. So it really takes that mindset of, do you want to go out there and sort of, kill your own dinner, so to speak, and really be responsible for everything? Or do you want to let somebody else sort of, be the boss and be the hunt and tell you where to go, and you're just happy following the line and reaping the benefits of that while doing some of the hard work. So did you start up 7 Degrees in 2009?
I did, yes. So almost 12 years ago, believe it or not.
Yeah, and the reason that date's so I know 2009 financial downturn, and I remember, I think we were connecting a lot. There was a lot of now I'm going to mess up the name, but the events that we were doing, event camp. Yeah, so I think that's where we originally met, and through the Event Profs community on Twitter. And as you were talking about social media, I remember that moment in time where, all of a sudden every association, everything was like, the hot trend was social media. Like every other event that you were going to was, new social media trends, and you were excited about it. Like it wasn't old. It wasn't, it was like, yes. Oh, Jessica's presenting. Oh, this person's presenting. Oh, Corbin Ball is presenting all that. All right, like let's go, and get into it. And that was a very nice prelude, both from the financial collapse standpoint and from the innovation aspect, because we were talking about hybrid and virtual back in 2009. The conversation sort of kind of went away because it was like, all right, yeah, we understand what hybrid is now, and yes, we can do a virtual element. Some people were still like, yes, let's do this as an added-on component. We can do it in every event. We can use the media from it. We can add the added revenue to it. There was other people like, yeah, that fad is gone and it's hard work. I'm not going to do that. And now it's sort of interesting to see like who's sort of succeeding and who's sort of like, man, I'm just waiting for the live events to come back.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in what you just said.
Yeah.
From the business standpoint, I definitely think it was maybe right place, right time. I also understood instinctually that when I started as a social media company, that was not going to be the end all, and that it really had to be part of a bigger package, a bigger integrated strategy. And I think I think that's part of why I'm still in business today, is that I created my company so that it could evolve and it wasn't tied to just one thing. And I feel where I am now is pretty comfortable, but it's very different from what it looked like in the beginning. But when you bring up the event camp concept and the hybrid events that we were looking at and experimenting with 10 years ago, I think, and I knew this then, that this technology we're using now, while the platforms didn't exist, it's not much different. But the reason that it didn't really take off is the same thing that we know now. I understand the roaring 20s because nothing is going to replace those face-to-face experiences. We can get super creative. I've done virtual events. I did a virtual conference a few weeks ago that was very successful. We had a lot of interaction, but it's just not the same. It's not the same as having shared experiences together. We don't have pheromones. Until we can magically create pheromones that go through the internet and give real hugs that feel like a virtual hug, live events are going to come back, and they're going to come back like the roaring 20s. So I think we were I'm glad that we looked at what we did 10 years ago and we learned a lot, and we're applying that today. But I think when we're able to, and hopefully it will be in 2021, and I'm confident it will definitely be in 2022, that we'll be able to integrate technology better, but we're gonna be face to face.
I love that sort of eye on the past to see what the future holds. So I think I understand what you're getting at when you're talking about the roaring 20s, but can you spell that out for folks, what you think based on, what happened in the 1920s, what coincidentally is going to happen in the 2020s?
Well, yeah, I mean, so the 1918 Spanish flu had people locked down, and maybe people didn't really talk about it that much. But when the pandemic was over and people were able to go out, they went out and they enjoyed life and they partied, and they missed people. And I think we're going to see a lot of that. It might not be fancy parties where we're all dressed up drinking champagne and fancy cocktails, but we're going to be out there and
I think there's going to be a lot of champagne.
There's going to be a lot.
I think there's going to be a ton of champagne. There's going to be a lot of stuff.
My perception of the Roaring 20s is that it was so glamorous. And to be honest, I want to dress up in a fancy dress and go somewhere. But the whole concept of just celebrating life and being with other people after being in a very close-knit bubble for however, I mean, we're already 9 months in. We're gonna do it, and hopefully we can learn and do it well and do it safely and appreciate each other. And I think sometimes, it's another conference, it's another meeting, but really appreciate the fact that we get together and how important that is for relationship building, how important that is for business, how important that is for friendships.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, along those futurist lines, I think we're gonna see a couple of different things happen, and I'd love to get your opinion on this. But I think there's a lot of people that, for lots of different reasons, introverted, just financial challenges of running a vehicle and transporting from one place to another. There's a lot of people that will have benefited from the ability to run meetings, the fact that so many more people are comfortable getting on a Zoom call. I know on the personal level for Toth Event Staffing, where we always did a phone interview, and then that was followed up, once a successful phone interview was done, you would have an in-person interview, which, a lot of times that it didn't take, I do an hour-long interview with the person, but it wouldn't take me an hour long to see the immediate initial issues. Uniform isn't the right way. Maybe just in terms of like the feel, because we're a hospitality company and you have to have a certain kind of demeanor as you enter a house. Those are some things that I can lay out before you travel an hour, 2 hours to come to my office for an interview. We can get some of that stuff out of the way. That saves me time and deliberation going back and forth, and that further eliminates time between the actual hiring process and sending somebody out on a job. Now, you know exactly what to do. You're coming into the office. We don't have to do a redo on this. You know what the expectations are. So the only thing that you're doing really coming into the office is doing can you get to a physical destination on time in the right uniform kind of thing. And we're not having to do a lot of the in-person talk stuff. We can get that out of the way very easily. So I think it's going to benefit a lot of people. And then on the other side of it, what we already talked about, there's going to be so many people, especially the wealthy class. And just to sort of go back and sort of look at that, I think we have a view of the 20s of like the rich, the champagne, because that's the photos, right? I sort of enjoy the pictures of, 20s, 30s Manhattan. Everybody's walking around in a suit and fedora. I'm like, I don't know how close to the reality that was. Maybe it was the reality in one spot of Manhattan, but it certainly wasn't the reality in most are all of Manhattan, right? We just have these pictures that, those are the ones that kind of move forward, but there's a larger, deeper life out there.
Well, I think one of the lessons is that the roaring 20s ended with the crash of the stock market and the Great Depression, right? So the 30s were very different. And so I think hopefully we do learn from history and and can do some things right. But your point about like the Zoom calls and stuff, I definitely think there is a greater comfort level with them. And sometimes I take it for granted. As you mentioned in the opening, I'm the regional director for Abacus Worldwide, which is an association, and we're a global team. And I've never met my team members, and
wow,
I worked for them prior to the pandemic. We were supposed to meet in person. That did not happen, but all of our interactions have been through Zoom pre-pandemic, because this is just how we run a virtual office or virtual company. And I think there will be a lot more comfort level with that. I think that people who have been struggling, wanting to telecommute, and there's been pushback on that, employers are realizing that it's possible. So I think this has definitely helped us in a lot of ways, and these things will stay, right? The ability for us to just, rather than hop on a call, be able to see each other, be able to talk. A lot of us were doing this already, and now it's just become a lot more mainstream, and people have overcome some of the fear of using technology, the fear of being on camera, right? If you're not used to that, it can be very strange to have to see yourself. It's still strange to see yourself. But yeah, so I think the tools, the adoption of the tools will change, but I don't think that like virtual conferences are going to replace meetings like that, right? It will be a hybrid, just a different kind of hybrid.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm interested to sort of see where the world goes, how fast it goes, and what is going to be sort of the norm, especially for corporate, especially as I think much like the green initiatives, which we're talking about that in terms of like, some of that stuff has been backed up because the same things that were green before, like the worst for like, spreading germs. But the interesting thing of, all right, so everyone's working from home, so we don't need this big building. We don't have to spend all this money. All right, that's more cost savings for us. The people that were working in that building, they enjoy because it's more convenient. We can give them a little bit more money for their home office and still save money. This works, right? So now are we meeting more because companies need the interaction that they formerly got at the water cooler? Now we have to create more meetings. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. It's going to be interesting to see how fast and how much and what people deem as the right amount of get-togetherness per, kind of industry. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of blog articles about that in the soon-to-be future.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that's going to come down to leadership. Like you mentioned, okay, so you're not spending on real estate overhead, but and people are still adapting. But I'm hearing, friends. I have a friend who works for a major financial company who had to go out and buy her own second screen. The company would not give her one. They wouldn't give her what she needed. And I've heard a lot about this. The companies they're saying, okay, well, you can't come to the office, but we're not necessarily going to invest in you in the right way. So this really is going to be, the companies that are going to do this well are going to be the ones that have leaders who really get it and who understand that even if you're not in an office, that you have to support your employees. You're just supporting them in a different way. So part of that is by giving them the right tools. And then part of it is understanding that balance of, okay, we can do this for a long time, but at some point we have to be together, because the stuff that comes naturally that is not scripted, it's not that doesn't fit nicely into an hour time block, right? In an hour time block, you're scheduled, and so you have to make use of that time versus being in a multi-day event where conversation might come up in the hallway. We're missing those hallway water cooler conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's really interesting. And I think this kind of gets into a little bit of the mentorship, especially on the entrepreneurship level, the understanding that there's a lot of opportunity available if you're able to, because you're going to have a lot of companies that are doing that. They're nickel and diming, especially because companies are hurting now. So they're not looking at the long game. They're looking at, hey, we don't have a lot of money right now. We don't necessarily know what the future holds. We're not going to make that investment in you, even though you can't come into the office, because where it was an office before, and if you were going to go away, we just, that computers are, that desk is ours. We just throw somebody else on it. So this is a little bit more risky because I'm going to pay for something that's going to go into your home, and then, it's very difficult to take back something once you give it, right? So I think it's going to be interesting for small businesses particularly, but mid-sized firms, the ones that see the value, make the investment, they have a lot of opportunity, I think, to eat somebody else's lunch. I'm interested in what you have to say about that. Yeah.
No, I think there's a lot of factors. One of the things we know is that not everybody is suited for working from home.
Yeah.
Whether it's personality or it's just circumstances, right? You see people having to work from their bedrooms, people who live with their families, who live in small apartments, who have children, and they're making do now, but they certainly don't want this to be the permanent situation. And it's also harder to have that work-life balance. If you, like, I have a home office, I can go into my office and I can leave my office. But if you're working from your kitchen table, if you're working from your bedroom, that's a lot harder to separate. And so it's not just a financial investment, but it's also leaders understanding the personal situations of their teams and helping to put them in the right scenario. So maybe it becomes more use of co-working spaces, or smaller offices, more flexible space, rather than going completely virtual. But it's going to be the leader's job to understand that, and then understand what kind of company they want to develop from a cultural standpoint. And I think culture is important to all of this, and is really a foundation of any company's success.
Yeah, no, I love that piece. I think that's so on point. And I think the co-working spaces are going to be one of those big things where it's like, all right, we don't have to invest in a whole building. We give the flexibility for the people to work where they are. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I think that's a great place. I think it's a challenging thing because I know New York City in particular, there's a lot of co-working spaces that are suffering. I think there's some that are probably doing better than others because they're, they saved a little bit more money. They had a little bit more marketing and they manage their properties better. But I think it's one of those spaces that is ripe for opportunity as we get into the future. Talking about opportunity, I know that you work with companies in so many ways. Talk to us about right now, you're a small company, maybe you're a solopreneur, you're an entrepreneur. What are you talking to people about in terms of making themselves stand out, be professional, and be ready for all the business that potentially they have right now or is to come as things open up?
So the biggest thing is to treat your company like it is a Fortune 500 company, and because of the resources out there, you can do it easily or somewhat easily and professionally. And I'm not saying that you don't have to invest a little bit of money. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people are scared of. They say, I'm just starting out. I don't have any money. I can't, I don't have a few $1,000s to invest in a website and a logo and a professional presence. And the truth is that can make such a difference in terms of how you get clients and how quickly you grow. It might not seem like a big deal. I might say, you know what, it's just a website, they know me. And in some cases it is, but really appearing professional, a little bit of an investment can go a very long way. If you worked at a company and they didn't have a website, if they didn't have a professional looking logo, what would you think? If you were interviewing there, what would you think about them? Well, it's the same thing if somebody's looking to hire you. Are they legitimate? Are they, is it somebody working out of their basement, or is it somebody that is taking their business seriously? And I'm a big believer that if you take your business seriously, you will be much more successful. I've seen it happen so many times. And people who try to do it, all right, I'm gonna have a Gmail address. I don't need a professional email address. Or I'm gonna create a website myself, which you can, but if you don't have those skill sets, if you don't have a good eye for design, if you can't write, it's gonna show. So I said, I'm a big believer that there's a return on it.
Yeah, no, I love that piece about, maybe you can do it yourself, but maybe you need a little bit help outside your skill set. Talk to us about the coaching that you would do in terms of like working with somebody. Let's say I have my company and I, really good at, the digital piece, and I can do the marketing, but I don't know how to organize my systems. How would you help somebody in that instance?
So one of the things I do is I work with like solopreneurs or small businesses. I don't like to use the word coaching, but it's coaching / consulting, where I guide you through what you need, and you use me as a sounding board. Coaching, a lot of times is, well, what do you think you should do? Where my approach is, this is what you need to do, and measuring that on a regular basis. So you have somebody to bounce ideas off of, but also somebody who has experience and can say, these are the things you need. One of the things I think people sometimes are like, okay, I need a website, I need a logo, but they ignore the back office piece of it, having a CRM in place, having bookkeeping in place, being able to track where your business is coming from. And it is so much easier to do this from the beginning when you think, well, I don't really have a lot of contacts, I don't need to do this. It is very hard once you have a huge database, once you've already created your business, to try to go and backtrack and create this. Starting from the ground up makes the entire process much easier and ultimately much more cost effective.
Yeah, I just ran into this challenge because I was like, all right, I had already got into MailChimp before some of this other stuff, and I was trying to send out a newsletter. And one of the things that you run into is, okay, so you have all these contacts in your database, but you haven't gotten them to opt into a campaign. So all of these, campaign type softwares basically have rules that, okay, we can do a mass bulk email for you. Have they opt in? And so if you respect the people that are on your contact list and you're answering honestly, right, and they haven't opted in, now you have a lot of groundwork to do to get the people ready to accept this communication. Whereas if you start your website from the beginning, have a funnel in to lead people. So that might be a call to action on the website to grab the free ebook, or it may be the event that you're doing where you're grabbing emails and you have the terms of service that we have the ability to send out a newsletter to you that you're opting into that. If you're doing that from the beginning, then your list is all ready to go. Everybody knows, the deal, or at least has signed off on it, and you're ready to go. If you're coming at it, where I got 9,000 folks in the address book, but I can't really drop them into a system like that because I haven't done the pre-work. It's something that it does create a big challenge.
Yeah, there's so much more to it beyond the marketing side of it. So I'm a partner for Zoho One, and I've used Zoho CRM for years and started doing implementations a few years ago, and recently became a partner because of its ability to really run your entire business. So beyond marketing, I mean, it does go into like doing estimates and proposals, but also your time.
Talk to folks a little bit about what a CRM is for those that are uninitiated. And then I would love for you to just talk about what aspects that it actually does, because that's great.
Sure. So a CRM is a customer relationship management system. It's basically your customer database. It's where you store their names and their addresses and information about their preferences. But it's more than that. It's where you can store the jobs you've done for them, the client work. So Zoho One, which is the system that I use, integrates your bookkeeping, it integrates your estimates, it integrates project management. So everything that you need to communicate with a prospect through being a client, working with them, and then also working with your team. So the CRM is kind of the fundamental piece of it, the database. Zoho One, which I use, has multiple components to give you an ERP, which is an enterprise resource program, things that big companies run on. It really gives you that ability to have that as a small organization, and cover the things you wouldn't even necessarily think about, signing of contracts, like a DocuSign, all of those pieces that are really important.
Can you spell, like, just kind of walk through, let's say you got a event company or a services type of company, what that workflow typically looks like without something like this in place, and then how it would work with the system in place?
So one of the things that often happens is you end up using lots of different systems, and they don't always talk to each other, right? So you might be using MailChimp for a newsletter, but you might be using QuickBooks for your invoicing, and you might have a lead generation form on your website that may or may not go into MailChimp. You might be using something to track time. Maybe it's a written timesheet. And then maybe that gets entered into QuickBooks, or maybe it just never gets accounted for. You might be buying things for a client that you're not necessarily accurately tracking to their job. You might be spending money on advertising, but you don't necessarily know if it's working because you don't know where a customer came from. You might be managing your people, if you have a team, on a completely different system, and nothing really talks to one another. And so this brings all of those pieces together in one system, so that you don't have to purchase all these different systems, and that adds up in cost. So one of the reasons that I like this, and it's probably the biggest reason, is that it is cost effective for a small business, and allows you to have a high level system at a price that I believe that most small businesses can afford if they're using it right and they're taking their business seriously.
Yeah, I love that. I think that value proposition thing is really important. So understanding, at what level this makes sense, and where this actually saves you money, working with a couple people and sort of stages, okay, so if I'm making this much money in a month, and I'm doing this kind of business, this is where it sort of starts making from a money time perspective, because now I can really delegate things. I can have my team members. This might not necessarily be for somebody that's, one person making less than $5,000 a month. But if you have a mid-sized kind of a firm, and you're trying to manage a whole team and trying to do processes by hand and try to get everybody to follow and do things, and they're not necessarily doing them, this is like night and day in terms of life.
Yeah, but to that point about, you might be a small business, but if you set yourself up right and you train your clients, a lot of business is about how you train your clients. you might be that small business that's making $5,000 a month, but if you're efficient and you are presenting yourself as very professional and very buttoned up, it might not be long until you're that 10,000 a month, 20,000 a month, growing your team. And you've already put the systems in place from the beginning. So it's so much harder to go back. It's much easier to start from the beginning.
I love that. And this is the perfect time for folks that are like, hey, I want to start something new. I want to renegotiate my position in the world and get to it. So I really suggest for folks, if you're interested in these kind of ideas, to get in touch with Jessica. Jessica, how can folks get in touch with you? I know I have your LinkedIn address and website down below on YouTube and off to the side on Facebook, but who should be getting in touch with you? Who are people that you want to connect with, and how should they connect with you?
So website is great, 7degrees.co. My email's on there, Facebook. I'm very, very accessible. In terms of who, I think whether you have a small business and are trying to navigate, or you're renegotiating your position in life, as you said, and trying to figure that out, happy to talk with you about that. Like, I talk to people and sometimes I'll say, I don't think you're meant to be an entrepreneur. And it's not, like, I never want to hold people back. I generally tend to have more confidence in people than they do, but I also understand that it is not for everybody. So I'm always happy to talk to people about the pros and cons, and sometimes they end up being a fit for somebody I know that's hiring, or helping them figure out what type of job they should be looking for. I never want people to think that entrepreneurship is the only way, because it is not for everyone. You definitely have to have the personality for it. Yeah, you just do. And the grass is not always greener. I think it's like one is grass and one is water, and they're not even the same thing.
I think it's interesting that there's lots of levels to it too. I think for young folks, like, I encourage the idea of, like, think entrepreneurs, have that entrepreneur spirit, because, maybe your dream is to work for Disney, but at the same time, there's something that you really enjoy in terms of doing this kind of art or doing that kind of thing. So getting those skills sort of capable to take advantage of the world that is. We have all these tools that are better than ever before to allow you to actually take advantage of it. So it might be just like the events industry. You don't have to go all the way in. You can use a hybrid model to be an entrepreneur. There's lots of different levels to it. I really suggest that folks reach out to Jessica. She knows what she's talking about when it comes to technologies, systems. She can help you, guide you through the processes. Jessica, thank you so much for doing this. I'm going to give you the opportunity to say goodbye to everybody and tell people how to get in touch with you one more time, and then I will play the BizDev theme.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I always love chatting. I said, if you go to 7degrees.co, you can email me there. I said, I wear a lot of different hats, and I believe you can too. And I'm always happy to chat and share advice with anybody. So don't be shy. I love making new friends. And hopefully one day we will get to meet in person.
Thank you, Jessica.
BizDev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. BizDev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. BizD with C, brought to you by Cameron T. BizD with C, brought to you by Cameron T. This is business development, not even selling it. This is intelligent. If you watch it, I promise you benefit. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. BizDev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. BizDev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. BizD with C, brought to you by Cameron T. BizD with C.